Hello everyone. Good evening, and we are most welcome to today's class in the 18th cohorts of the Electoral College. I welcome you all and would implore party leaders, partner brother members to join the class. Class will be starting in the next 5 minutes. You have the next 5 minutes to call your co-formators. See you all in 5:05. Thank you. Yeah, while we wait to galvanize every other members to join the class, please confirm with a show of hands if you can hear me clearly. Please confirm if you can hear me clearly. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. See you all in 3 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Yeah, hello everyone. You're welcome to today's class. And this is so disappointing having less than 100 members in class after the 5 extra minutes. While we wait for others to join, permit me to introduce our facilitator for today's class. And our topic today is strategic political communication. And our facilitator for today is Miss Petra Akinti Onyegbule. Yes, Petra Akinti Onyegbule. Please kindly join me as I introduce her through her profile. Petra Akinti Onyegbule is a respected political communication strategist and public affairs consultant with nearly 2 decades of experience in message development, political PR, perception management, and policy advocacy. Known for her clarity, depth, and strategic insight, Petra has advised political leaders, government agencies, and institutions on how to navigate public opinion, build trust, and shape narratives that drive influence and public engagement. She made history as the first chief press secretary in northern Nigeria, serving the governor of Kogi State from 2016 to 2019. In that capacity, she led all state communications, strategizing media relations, managing crises, and improving public perception through transparent, people-centered messaging. Currently, Petra is the group head of corporate communication and customer experience at Credlanch Group, where she oversees multiple channel messaging, stakeholder engagement, and brand positioning across subsidiaries. Our work ensures synergy between corporate reputation and customer trust, an extension of our ability to connect policy, messaging, and public sentiment. Core political communications expert that she is, message development and political branding, which is one of our line of expertise, crafting persuasive, culturally relevant messages that resonate with constituents. Reputation and crisis management. She guides political leaders through reputational storm with strategic responses that protect credibility. Through media strategy and public relations, she amplifies voices through targeted media placement, grassroots engagement, and storytelling. On political advocacy, policy advocacy, she leads issue-based campaigns that shape public discourse and support policy change. In government relations, she builds bridges between elected officials and stakeholders, also strengthening alliances and policy support. Petra has mentored several young communicators and political aides, offering guidance on navigating political spaces with strategic precision. She's also the director of Libra Prime Communications, a consultancy specializing in political PR and strategic messaging, the founder of Anike Roberts Clothing, where she combines entrepreneurship with advocacy, and she is the first female vice president of Ogori Descendants Union to accelerate her community development service. Our academic portfolio includes a BA in sociology, MA in international affairs and strategic studies, an MBA in finance and investment, and an ongoing Masters of Philosophy in Leadership and Strategic Studies, PhD in track, which collectively ground her in governance, economic policy, and strategic leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our facilitator for today's topic, strategic political communication, Ms. Petra Akinti Onyegbule. Thank you. You're welcome, ma'am. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much and good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, so that's an affirmation that everybody can hear me. I'm very delighted to be back again for a facilitation of a session with you. I was sharing earlier that I was very, very delighted when I was putting together my slides for today's presentation. I hope that you will enjoy it as much as I have. Again, my name is Petra Akinti Onyebule. Yep. And I'm going to be sharing on strategic political communication. However, I have decided that I'm going to niche it down to communication as a governance tool. Confirm that you can see my slide, please.
Yes, we can see your slide.
Thank you. Thank you. As always, I'll begin with, hold on, sorry. As always, I'll begin with my learning objectives. And the learning objectives for today's class is that at the end of this session, it is my hope that all of us will be able to define the concept of governance and explain the role of communication within it, list and describe at least 5 key functions of communication in governance, compare and contrast the effectiveness of communication strategies in different governance contexts. For example, Nigeria versus other countries that we know of. That examine a real world case study like the NCDC's COVID-19 communication strategy and analyze the outcomes. Propose recommendations to improve existing governance communication systems based on evidence and best practices. Before we go further, I would like us to, as much as this is a virtual presentation, I would like for it to be as participatory as possible. So you want to speak, of course, you are not new to our sessions. You just raise your hand and then we take it up from there. So I want us to cast our mind back to some of these statements. There are quotes that have been made in statements by famous Nigerian leaders. Let's see if you know anyone. You cannot give what you do not have. That's number one. The second one is this country must change and it must change for the better. That's two. The last one is Nigeria does not lack ideas, it lacks education. Who remembers who said what? Anyone? Any hands up?
No, I'm looking out for any.
Let's give it 1 minute. Maybe somebody will remember something.
All right. Okay, we have one wisdom.
Okay, wisdom, please go on.
Wisdom, kindly speak. You have the mic. Wisdom.
Am I audible? Sorry, I'm speaking.
Yes, now. You
Okay.
are.
The last one that says Nigeria does not lack ideas, it lacks execution. I think it was Saraki that said this. Well, I can't remember if it was when he was in the Senate or out, but I think I've heard him make mention of this. I've heard a jingle like this.
Okay. Any other one?
Yeah, we have Kende Amuson.
Yes, please.
Okay, the last one, Nigeria does not lack idea, lack regime. I think it's from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's speech, one of his speech. And the second one, I think it's from President Muhammadu Buhari, late President Muhammadu Buhari.
Okay. Yes. The last one was actually by late former President Muhammadu Buhari. You cannot give what you do not have. Was by Saraki. This country must change and it must change for the better was actually by late General Murtala Mohammed. What does this quote, just pick any of the quotes, what does it say about the leader's communication style? Anyone? Wisdom, do you want to help us with this, or is this a legacy hand up?
Conveniently.
Wisdom, you want to have a go at this one, or is this from the
Wisdom.
previous conversation?
Okay, Nigeria does not lack ideas, it lacks execution. I think what the speaker was trying to say, the speaker's presentation style shows that probably he's ready to work or probably ready to do something different because the person who said it is in a position of power, and I believe it sounds either like a campaign message or something.
Okay, thank you very much. Adeni, your hand is up. You have the floor.
Okay, ma. And what I see about this statement is, okay, let's say, for instance, Nigeria does not lack ideas, it lacks execution. What it's trying to say about the communication of the leader is that it's trying to say that we need to get our hands on deck. That's what I understand about it. That everybody
Thank you.
must.
Thank you very much. Now, when we are talking about communication in governance, we are talking about what the speaker intends and, of course, what the public hears. What the public hears will eventually lead to how the public reacts. Again, another participatory exercise. Three quotes here, three statements. One is subsidy is gone. The second one, we have removed the waste in the system. The third one, we are borrowing to build infrastructure. The first, we have 2-in-1 exercises here. The first one, who actually said what? Subsidy is gone. 1. 2, we have removed the waste from the system. 3, we are borrowing to build infrastructure. Yes, please, Adeni.
Okay, and that subsidy is gone was said by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Okay.
Yes, and
sorry?
Okay, it was said by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and when he said it, we are going to notice that immediately he made that statement. Before you know what is happening, a lot of people started increasing their fuel pump because they all believe that subsidy is gone, and that statement alone changed a whole thing in the policy of the nation in terms of fuel price and every other thing in the country. It changed a lot of things, and the way people actually reacted to it was in a speed of light.
Thank you very much. Kehinde Amusan. Kehinde, are you there? No, he is not. Ogene Mao. I hope I got that well.
Okay, it's Ogene Mao.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
The last one, we are borrowing to build infrastructure. I think it was made by Peter Obi in criticizing, talking about the building of. I'm trying to remember words, but there was a center that was built in Abuja or innovated, something like that, by Winke. I think it was that conversation that he made that statement.
Okay, thank you. Any other hand up? Okay, like Adeni rightly said, so that we move it along and don't waste too much time. Subsidy is gone was made by that statement was made by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu May 29th during his inauguration. And as soon as he said it, of course, we all know it's a very recent event that happened, that occurred. We know how the public reacted to it based on the perception, not based on the message in itself, because it's a factual message. The subsidy, I mean, there was no provision for subsidy in the budget that he made. He came in May 29th. That means there was already a budget that was running. There was no provision for subsidy. Was it a fact that subsidy was already gone? It's a fact that it was gone. But how come the perception was wrong? How come public reaction to it was very unfavorable? And that is what we are discussing in this particular slide. We are discussing messaging framing, how to frame messages. Intention versus perception will lead to public reaction, whether negative or positive. We have removed the waste in the system was the famous statement that Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala always made between 2011 to 2015. She always made it, she re-emphasized it over and over and over again to justify why at that time there was economic austerity. She kept on saying that loopholes had been plugged, therefore there was no free money, and we have removed the waste in the system. The third one, we are borrowing to build infrastructure, was actually the slogan, unofficial slogan of the immediate past administration of former President Muhammadu Buhari. Every time that critics and opposition criticized that Nigeria was borrowing too much, the justification was that we were not borrowing to pay salaries as it used to be, that we were not borrowing for overhead costs, but that we were actually borrowing as a country to build infrastructures such as roads, the rails, and what have you. Now, don't forget, we are talking about framing. What was the message that was intended? Subsidy is gone was supposed to tell people to brace up, that the period where we had near free fuel from filling stations because government was subsidizing heavily had gone. And so we were going to enter a period of some tough, economic realities. However, like Adeni mentioned, immediately prices of goods went up. Immediately, even supporters of the president who had campaigned heavily for him started grumbling and criticizing that policy. Was subsidy supposed to go? It remains debatable. But it was received very negatively. The second statement, we have removed waste from the system, of course, was received with skepticism because the government of that time was perceived to be very corrupt. How would you reframe it for better impact now? Is there anybody who wants to say anything? We are borrowing to build infrastructure. Some Nigerians believed it because they could see some of the things. Of course, some did not believe it. There would always be skeptics. But framing, when you use data, when you use things that people can relate with, would always help. When you want to announce a policy change, such as going from people enjoying subsidy to saying that subsidy is no more, it requires a lot more empathy. It requires a lot more change in tone. It requires a different strategy entirely. So now let's hear from you. How would you reframe any of this? Just pick any of these statements. For instance, subsidy is gone. Let's look at that. How would you have reframed it for better impact and for positive perception? Anyone? Yes, Adeni.
Okay, if I were to be the president, I knew subsidy is gone. But what I would just say is I would just say that okay, that very soon that we might not enjoy this subsidy for a very long time. We might not enjoy it. It's just like a kind of diplomatic statement. Or I'm like, okay, everything is going on underground. Everybody is doing this. So at least with that, things won't just skyrocket like that. And I will make sure that at least there is a very good provision for that subsidy before we just remove that subsidy. We won't just remove it just like that.
Okay. Any other person? I have Jabez. Yes, please. Jabez, you are the first person I have met, even if virtually, that bears that name. It's my pleasure to meet you.
Jabez, you have the mic. Are you there?
Okay, Ambassador Stanley, please.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I stand to be corrected. I think also in political communication is not everything you say. So if the subsidy had been removed from January of 2023, before he was sworn in, some months before he was sworn in, he just to play along, and he didn't need to say anything about the subsidy, rather continue to effect the changes already captured in the budget. It's not everything you say. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Jabez, are you ready for us now?
Hello, Jabez, are you there? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Aminat, you have the mic, please.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
If I happened to be the president, I would not have said it directly. I would have used the kind of diplomacy in saying it. I would have said it in a way that, oh, the country is likely to experience an economic shift in probably in few months or few time to this time. So I'm really not specific. I'm really not pointing finger at a particular policy, or I'm really not saying a particular aspect of the economy has been changed, but everybody will be prepared. So if you have money, you would have done one or two, and it won't just hit hard, like he said directly. Thank you.
Margaret, please, you have the mic.
Hi, good evening, everyone. First of all, if I was the president, I wouldn't make that statement on my swearing-in day. More so considering all of the campaigns and anxiety that happened, all of the tension and anxiety that happened all through my campaign period and everything that trailed through my election. So I would definitely not make that statement on my swearing-in day. And then when I want to remove subsidy, I did, first of all, consult my PR team, my communications team, and then they craft subtle media campaigns that would first be appealing, because humans are emotional people, are emotional beings. So we appeal to them subtly, open the conversation, invite them to join the conversation. And then it feels like we're reaching a consensus together. So when leaders journey with the people they lead, no matter how harsh policies are, the people feel like they were part of the conversation, they were part of the decision making, they will easily comply. Thank you.
How many more can we take to know where to draw the line, please?
I think that we need just two more responses. I know that this is a very interesting topic, but two more, and then we will have more opportunities to contribute down the line.
All right, Abiodun, you have the mic.
Okay, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. Well, if I am the one first thing I will say is that since there was no subsidy in the current budget, the government, the incoming government will focus on those resources, on the things that matter to us in the country, like better education, economic infrastructure, and education that are directly benefit to the people. At least I will make that statement, because knowing fully that if I did not make any statement about subsidy on that day, I will not be able to implement my campaign promises, because I have told the people that immediately I come in, subsidy will be gone. And I know that many of our things in Nigeria are affected by the petroleum, because transportation is the main thing, and it is the petrol that affected it. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Kende is finally back. Let's see if he's ready now. Kende Amuso.
I'm ready, sir.
Oh, great.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir Rama. If I'm in the position that the president is that time, I will make sure it will still be the same statement, but I will back it with so many. I will back it with a lot of reassurance that this thing that we are going to do, it will be to the end that it will be for common man good. There's an approach that former governor of Oyo State used during his tenure. It was after he followed a particular policy that he started calling town hall meeting. And that town hall meeting, he made sure that his executive member, they explained everything to indigene, and it did it in a way that he traveled down to all zones of the state to make sure that everybody were greatly informed about the essence of it.
Okay, so thank you all very much for your wonderful perspectives and insights into the famous or infamous statement of the president: subsidy is gone. Somebody made a very profound contribution. Of course, all contributions are well taken and they are all correct. There is never any wrong answer. Like they say, hindsight is always the best. When you look in hindsight, or when you are not the one who is in the driver's seat, things are always done best. However, Margaret made some profound statements in her contribution. She said that she would not have made that statement on the swearing-in day. And I think that situates, please, you may drop your hands so that your hands do not begin to hurt. Because the campaign period was tough. If we recall, there was scarcity of fuel. And so her contribution situates the place in communication. Was it the perfect venue? Perhaps if I was president, I would have made that statement on that day, because there is never going to be a perfect time to actually make such a statement. It's a statement that would come with a lot of strong reactions. However, I probably would have used the backdrop of the elections that we had just come out of. The fact that there was a lot of fuel scarcity, and the scarcity, what caused the scarcity? The fact that government was, of course, unable to pay marketers because of inflation, because of oil theft, because the people who were supposed to benefit from the subsidy were not benefiting. And over the years, the system had proven unable or unwilling, or unable and unwilling to actually tackle the main problem, which was the problem of corruption in subsidy. Therefore, I would say that it was a very, very, there was no other alternative, but that I would give a roadmap to how long the immediate impact was going to be felt for. And I will talk about when people would most likely begin to see the positive impact of the removal of fuel subsidy, I'll talk about the fact that it's going to increase revenue for states, definitely, because I mean, it's a no-brainer. And the fact that people could then, when it happened, begin to hold their state governors to account and appeal to state governors to actually ensure that the more revenue they got was going to get to the people. However, most times, what from my experience, having worked with policymakers over the years, sometimes you advise and they do what they want to do. Sometimes they don't even consult for the framing. They don't think about the perception of the message that they want to give and how the framing is going to be very important. Subsidy living was something that everybody agreed to. All the candidates agreed to it. The modalities were things were not discussed. And of course, that day, Nigeria actually shook. And I think that we are just beginning. Some people or most people, I don't have the data, are just beginning to recover from the shock of that statement economically. So we move on to the next. What is governance? We cannot talk about communication in governance or communication as a tool in governance if we do not know what governance is. Of course, we all experience governance. We feel the impact of governance. By the way, a lot of people are dropping their thoughts in the chat section of the platform. So please do well to check some of the contributions that are being dropped. With time, I think our moderator might have to read some of this for us. Governance is the process of decision making. It is the process by which decisions are implemented or not implemented. Yes, either implemented or not implemented. Governance includes government, it includes civil society, it includes the private sector, all stakeholders. Effective governance upholds the rule of law, accountability, and transparency. Communication is the strategic exchange of information between government and its stakeholders to ensure effective administration. It promotes mutual understanding, legitimacy, and informed participation in governance process. Please have at the back of your mind that all through this conversation that we are going to have this evening, framing is very, very important. How you frame your message determines how the public will, one, perceive that message. That is, you have said one thing, but what the public hears, does it align with what you have actually said? And that framing is going to eventually be responsible for how the public receives it. Are they going to be provoked into perhaps demonstrations, perhaps riots, perhaps a pushback? Or would it give them some sort of understanding and awareness into the situation of things and issues and help them understand the position of government? You cannot expect understanding from people when they do not actually understand what is going on. There is a song by Phil Collins, I think the soundtrack to Tarzan, You Will Be in My Heart, says people don't trust what they can't explain. They just don't trust what they can't explain. So if you cannot explain something, the distrust for that thing will be high. And of course, you are most likely going to denounce it and in some cases, demonize it. So communication, what we have seen happening most times in governance, especially in our client, is that there is hardly ever communication. What we see is information dissemination. Government has done XYZ, and that's that. People do not understand why government would need to spend X amount of money on a project. But when communication comes in, it becomes strategic because it is still exchange of information. However, it becomes about development. It becomes situational. When government speaks to that project or when they speak to that particular information or policy, I begin to see myself within the policy. You begin to relate with the policy because you can situate yourself within that policy. It makes sense to you. When it makes sense to you, you may not necessarily agree with it, but you can understand it. They are two different things. So usually what we do is we just pass information. Government has said that the president has ordered that 250,000 naira should be paid to core members. I think that was very well received because who encountered some form of mishap and have disability. So it was something that was relatable. There was some empathy in it. And so I didn't hear anybody criticize it. There are some times that I will give you a practical example. When I was Chief Press Secretary to Governor Yahaya Bello, we went for a function, and the function was to some sort of commission poles, electric poles and electric cables, right? So I was, of course, offline. And by the time I came online, I had tons of mentions, tons of tags, of course, criticizing and actually making a mockery of the entire process. I was stunned because, number one, it was not announced that there was going to be any commissioning, of course. The strategic plan was to have the communication released afterwards, and the communication was ready. What was the communication? The fact that for over 20 years, a particular community had never been connected to the national grid, and that this community had always lived in darkness. And this community was a riverine community, and they survived on their subsistence farming and fishing. And that because they didn't have access to electricity, they all made do with tiger generators, those tiny generators. They didn't have the kind of money needed to buy, bigger generators. And these tiny generators were just powerful enough to maybe power bulbs, power TV, but not, say, deep freezers, for instance, where they could have, stored some leftovers of their agricultural produce. In this instance, maybe vegetables, maybe fish that they caught, and so there was a lot of wastage, and also that the climate was affected by the fumes, the carbon monoxide from those generators that, the generators emitted. And so the crafting was not about the fact that it was poles and cables, but how so significant something as little as electric cables could impact a community and put them in perpetual darkness. By the time the communication was received, there was a turnaround. People were able to understand because you know what? Sometimes most of us, when we criticize from a place of privilege. We hear that, for instance, a government has bought, there was a time, I think maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, there was a particular governor in a northern state who decided that he was going to empower his people by donating goats to them. I think goats and rams, I don't remember. But there was a lot of uproar, and the uproar was steeped in mockery. Who empowers people by giving them goods? But what I saw, which I don't think I ever commented on that particular episode, but what I saw and understood immediately, perhaps because of my background, is that, okay, an agrarian society, and they deal in animal husbandry. So you give a household a male goat and a female goat, and you expect some level of reproduction, that could actually be empowerment. But because what was done was a passage of information, government has donated goats to a community and everybody donated goods. It was not situated within the context of development. Development communication is what actually happens in governance. Because when you communicate and you talk about the development and what impacts a particular policy or a particular action of government is going to generate, whether on the long term or on the short term, whether directly or indirectly, people are able to understand better. What role does communication play in governance? It promotes transparency, of course, allows scrutiny and redress. Um, it allows for inclusive participation. Yeah, I think it was Margaret who talked about allowing people to own a decision, allowing them to feel that they are a part of a process that leads to arriving at a particular policy or a particular decision. It also informs public behavior, which leads to compliance and reduces conflicts. And by that way, we build peace. But like I said, in the absence of communication, which has become the norm, instead of transparency, we have a lot of distrust. Instead of accountability, government is frustrated. Why can they not see that what we are doing is for their own good? Meanwhile, citizens are wondering, why are you not allowing us to ask questions if there is nothing to hide? Participation, people feel left out of the process of governance, which is supposed to be participatory, especially in a democracy. And of course, there is a lot of pushback, there is no compliance, and sometimes there's a breakdown of law and order. Why does it matter so much that we have communication rather than just information dissemination in governance to build trust between citizens and government? And successive governments in Nigeria, both at the subnational and national levels, have shown that we have seen a very huge level of distrust. It enables transparency and accountability. We cannot say this enough. It encourages civic participation and inclusiveness. People don't say governance is their business. People see it as our business. All of us are part of governance, as we should be. And it helps manage crisis effectively, because when you communicate, then of course there would always be people who genuinely or mischievously would not understand what is being communicated. But the majority of people would understand. They would most likely key in, and they would be able to help educate other people and reduce crisis effectively. It facilitates implementation of government policies and reforms. So when government has a policy or a reform to carry out, instead of spending so much time trying to get buy-in, they already have the buy-in because communication is strategically carried out, and people, they get the buy-in and support of the people, thereby making it very easy and fast to ensure that policies and reforms are implemented. Now, what are the challenges in governance communication, especially in today's world? Misinformation and fake news, low digital literacy. A lot of people still they remind me of those days when we have things like beer parlor gossip. You know, it's a phrase in local parlance that people will go to the beer parlor and they will just come up with some gist, and before you know it, the entire community is, rehashing that particular conversation or statement and parroting that narrative. So because there is low level of digital literacy, people actually have handheld devices that are internet enabled, they have data, but then the same tool where they got the same platform where they got the fake news is the same platform that, rather than confirm the fake news or the not very accurate news, they begin to spread it. Poor infrastructure and internet access. Believe it, there are still communities where people do not have access to internet and sometimes when they even have access to internet, there is no electricity. Government censorship or media clampdowns is also a challenge. We remember when Twitter was shut down in Nigeria because it was believed by government or perceived by government to be a tool for very widespread of fake information. And then there is the bureaucratic language and lack of empathy. It's a huge challenge. You want to communicate a fact, but the fact that an information is a fact that does not mean that it cannot be couched in empathy. You don't just throw information out there because, well, that's what it is. It has to be the feelings of the people. The communication must come across as being carefully thought through and carefully crafted with the feelings of the people in mind, but that it's a critical decision that has to be made, is a critical policy that has to be formulated, or a reform that must be carried out for existential purposes. Now, we have highlighted some of these challenges. How do we now tackle the challenges? And I have grouped it into three: communication and transparency, communication and accountability, communication and citizen participation. How do we tackle these challenges? Government needs to provide real-time updates on government activities. We can use open data portals, e.g. budget tracking. That was something that Dr. Okonjo-Iweala or the Ministry of Finance used to do when Dr. Okonjo-Iweala was the Minister for Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy. Every month, on the first day of every month, there was publication of allocation to all the states and local government areas in Nigeria, all the states. Today, for instance, being 1st of August, all major newspapers would have carried what state got what and when they got it. So by the end of July, state would have, this federal government would have disbursed through FAC, and on first day of the month, you would have the information. It helped people understand what exactly got to the state. It was not shrouded in secrecy. Simplified policy explanations. For instance, budget. Budget makes budget really easy to understand. They tell us what is going on with some policy and the budgetary implication of it, the financial implications of decisions and policies that governments make it very, very easy. And so we see these things in black and white. And if government actually continues to do that, it would help in transparency. Communication and accountability. There should be platforms for complaints, redress, and whistleblowing. And performance dashboards and public scorecards should be the norm. For example, we have in Kaduna State Open Government Dashboard, which is supposed to project the government as being open and transparent and accountable to the public. And so people are able to see what exactly is happening in the state across sectors. Communication and citizen participation. There should be surveys, there should be polls, there should be consultations via town hall meetings, via ward meetings, via civic education, etc. And there should be inclusive policy design. When policies are being designed, there should be representatives of different stakeholders who are participating in those designs. Not too young to run, for instance, the campaign in Nigeria used social media a lot for youth advocacy and participation. It got a lot of people involved because it was open, and a lot of us just knew that we had to be aboard the campaign and advocacy. Communication in crisis management. However peaceful the times are, there are crisis moments, even in our families, in our organizations. There are crisis moments, and these moments reveal the true value of strategic communication. Please note that it's always about strategic communication, not just communication. The key points for communication in crisis management is that it requires timeliness. It's fast. You don't allow communication crisis fester before you address the issues. In my department at my workplace, 2 days ago, every month we have a book we read, and we all come together to present key highlights based on topics that we are given on the book that we have read. For the month of July, we decided to look at Things Fall Apart and the communication lessons from that book. One of the topics that a particular pair presented on was communication, crisis management in Things Fall Apart. And the people who presented said that When Okonkwo went to, with the villagers, it was decided that they should kill Ikemefuna, the slave who was kept with Okonkwo for safekeeping until when they decided what to do with him. When Okonkwo came back home, he didn't, there was no communication. And so it drove a wedge between his relationship it drove a wedge between his relationship between him and his son Nwoye, and it further deepened the dislike his son had for him and the disdain Okonkwo had for his own son. And so it made it so easy for Nwoye to embrace Christianity as soon as the missionaries came. Therefore, I'm just using that to underscore the importance of timeliness, empathy, and facts. That yes, this happened. It is true that it happened, but this is why it happened. And these explanations must be empathetic and must be timely. Crisis communication also reduces fear and uncertainty. For example, WHO multilingual updates during COVID-19 and even NCDC's updates during COVID-19 reduced a lot of panic. The way, especially Lagos State's handling of it, reduced a lot of panic because they were timely updates. The updates were factual. The updates were toned to, reduce anxiety and fear. Now, what are the legal and policy frameworks involved in communication in governance as a tool in governance? It helps to support open communication. Laws and policies must guarantee access. We have the Freedom of Information Act, which many people have actually called upon, they have invoked to get access to certain government information. And definitely there should be data protection and digital rights. Independent media laws that do not seek to of course, there should be regulation, but that do not seek to unnecessarily censor what is free speech. What is the role of the media and civil society in communication in governance? Free press and civil society are very critical communication allies. What should governments do when there is any critical decision or policy reform that needs to be communicated? They need to reach out to these stakeholders who are critical allies. There are stakeholders who you need on your side, not because without them the policy will not scale through, but because with them policy scales through more easily and faster. We need to have investigative journalists who take investigative journalism very seriously and abide by the ethics of the profession, not given to sensationalism, but just facts for facts' sake. Policy advocacy and education. Civil society, those days used to do a lot of civic education. During electioneering, you would find them doing voter education. During governance, there is civic education, talking about the rights of citizens and juxtaposing those rights with the duties and responsibilities of government. So you know that, yes, there is this contract. Citizens are supposed to come to the table with X, while government comes to the table with maybe Y or U, whichever one comes first. So, and civil society and media are supposed to be the watchdog for public accountability. They are supposed to serve as the bridge between the general public and government where accountability is concerned. There are different forms of governance communication. Some of them are informative, for instance, sharing updates and facts, just what we have. That's the most common form of governance communication that we have in Nigeria. Persuasive, gaining public support. We still need to do better. We hardly do that here. Consultative, seeking citizen input. We need to do better. Participatory, co-creating policies and decisions, making sure the citizens are part of decision-making process. We need to do a lot better in regards to 2, 3, and 4. And what are the tools for communication in governance? SMS alerts. What function does do they do? Real-time citizen updates. For instance, my car is registered in Lagos. I live in Abuja. Yesterday, I got an alert, SMS, that my car papers roadworthiness was going to expire in a few days. And so informing me so that I would not be penalized. You know that in Lagos, especially Lagos mainland, they don't even chase you about these days. You just have the camera that captures you. And by the time, whenever you decide that you are going to renew your papers, you have a long list of payments to make that without that your papers are not renewed. I've given the example, for instance, chatbots on websites to provide 24/7 information service. And one very good example of a government that does it is in South Africa, GovChat South Africa. E-portals where you can have feedback and applications. E-Citizen Kenya is a very good example for that. Then, of course, social media. It is mass and segmented communication in there. With Twitter, INEC X, INEC Nigeria's X account does a lot of that. They share communication using Twitter a whole lot. And EFCC as well. EFCC does a whole lot of that. Now, how do you measure communication effectiveness? You have strategized, you have put your tactics in place, you think that your strategy is airtight, and then you have executed. How do you measure that this communication is effective? Success in governance communication must always be evaluated. Now, how do we do it? Engagement analytics, for instance, the likes, and then analyzing the comments and the shares. You may have 1,000 shares, but why are 1,000 people sharing your updates? Is it to ridicule it? Is it to laugh at it? Is it to make a mockery of it? Is it to highlight the importance of the information? Or to just say, beware, guys, these people are at it again, they are lying. Sentiment analysis, that's, you look at the positive and the negative reactions. Apart from that, there are actual tools for gauging sentiment or for analyzing sentiments, whether it's positive or negative. And then policy outcome correlation. Is there increased compliance? Is there increased compliance that people willingly complying with the policy or the reform? Or do we have to have soldiers on the streets to ensure that there is compliance? These are ways to measure effectiveness of communication. Now we got to recommendations for policymakers. Recall 2 slides from here. I was saying that the only form of communication in governance that is pervasive in our society is the informative kind of communication, just throughout facts. So what can policymakers do? Number one, governments should act decisively in ensuring that they strengthen communication. Train public servants in strategic communication so that anybody who is speaking to the public understands that nuance is very important in communication. Tone is very important in communication. When you are facing an audience and it's physical, the body language is very important in communication, because most times people are listening to what you are not saying, even more than the things that you are saying. They are watching your body language to see if it matches with what is coming out of your mouth. Build strong media partnerships. Institutionalize feedback systems and stop seeing feedback, however critical, as an attack or an indication of hatred of government. Develop multilingual, accessible content and prioritize open governance tools. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, I have come to the end of today's presentation. I hope that you have enjoyed it first and foremost, and that you have taken down some critical points that are necessary for effective governance through effective communication. At this point, I am open to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my dear sister Petra. It's always a pleasure. I came in a little late, but it's a big thing. I learned quite a lot. Petra, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
you. Thank you for that strategic class. And like Edie said, you learned so much in this class today. And more grace to your elbow and more ink to your pen and more metabolism to your brain. So members, it's time for questions. Please signify by the raise of hands and we'll take it one after the other. Yeah, it's wisdom once again. Yes, wisdom, you have the mic, please.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Clearly, yes.
All right, thank you, ma, for your class. Just a quick question. When you made mention of crisis communication, and in the course of our study, we sometimes branch into crisis communication. As you are speaking, a question came to mind, and I said I should just ask quickly. There was a time when Yaya Bello was in power. There was this cattle colony issue, and I believe you were his chief press secretary at the time. So how did you handle the issue? Because I know that most people were very resistant to the cattle colony conversation. So how did you handle the issue in relation to this crisis communication, and what can we learn from the way you went about it?
Okay, thank you very much. I recall that episode as well. It was a policy of the federal government asking states to create colonies for cattle to ensure that we reduced the clashes and confrontations between farmers and herders. Of course, Kogi State was one of the very first states to accede to that request and said that we were going to create cattle colonies. And there was a lot of backlash because cattle colonies effectively in the minds of people was that it was going to be a way to cede lands from the owners of the land to herders who were mostly, of course, Fulani. How did I handle that? A lot of media runs. Remember, in the course of this presentation, I did say that you need to break things down to a level where people begin to understand so that even if they do not agree, opposition is not too fierce. But because the governor actually just made his own, he was at an event and that was where he said, oh, the federal government has said that the state should have cattle colonies. So we are going to have it, bam. And it led to crisis. There was crisis. It was not strategically communicated. It was off the cuff, unprepared, and then a lot of backlash. So there was a lot of media runs explaining that cattle colonies would belong to the state and it was not mandatory for any community to welcome it. It was not mandatory. It was an optional decision. State government was not going to force anyone to give up lands, even though according to the Land Use Act, all lands belong to the government, but that there was not going to be any kind of force involved. And somehow, I think that policy eventually died a natural death because perhaps the conversation was not carefully well thought. The policy was not participatory, and citizens felt unincluded in the decision to accept or accede to the federal government's request. And it's naturally just fizzled out. Less than 72 hours, that conversation was dead. Oh, just to add wisdom, what the governor eventually did was perhaps what he should have done, but he eventually did it. He called for stakeholders' engagement. There were meetings with local traditional rulers from across the state, where he had the Fulani heads or leadership as part of those meetings. And so they came to some form of understanding. But like I said, the policy eventually died a natural death. There is no cattle colony in Kogi State.
Yeah, Ibrahim Omar, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. And thank you very much for the presentation. I have questioned and a comment. My comment is regarding the communication on the lectures of our dear sister. So my question is on the communication. Yes, truly, communication is a powerful tool that governments need to take it seriously in terms of addressing the public. But as the way you act, you served a White Lion, that's the former governor of the state, Doza, what recommendation or what do you think that the federal government and the state government and the local government level that will do in terms of addressing that public communication that mostly leads to misinformation? Like, for example, I'm from Bauchi, but I stayed in Abuja due to my work. There is a gas explosion in one this the oil and gas sector. There is one gas explosion that happened in Karo Bridge. So the information that reached the people is that the gas kits flow, but while that is not really what happened in essence, because that makes people to be fair with gas. Now I'm talking, if you go to Karo police station, in front of that trailer and the kits are intact. So this kind of misinformation of communication that is leading people on fear, frustration, distrust to the government. So as public communicator, what advice do you have on that? Then my comment, well done for your presentation. I will really appreciate it. And my regards to our former boss, that's the Bendo, those are the White Lion. He did wonderfully for working with youth, and we are happy for with him, wish him well. And I hope and I wish that one day you will serve in national capacity under his administration or any other administration. Thank you very much. We appreciate. I'm the national coordinator of Mieti Allah Cattle Business Association of Nigeria, or non-governmental organization. So you tip in on a law that you wanted to create in Kogi State during your time as the governor. Fantastic. We met the committee, we meet the governor. The governor is a listenable governor, friendly governor, and what happens have happened, and you have digested it all. What I'm going to emphasize is that we Fulanis were peaceful people, and we have a mass number of population, so we can have illiterate among us, we have learned among us, but you can't judge people from few acts from them. And we really appreciate you in person, because then I was able to meet you in person, but with the governor and other stakeholders in Kogi State, you cooperate with us. And on behalf of MHR, all the youth and the non-governmental organizations, we appreciate you, and we do say thank you very much. And we are open for more conversation in terms of this issue, in terms of an open grazing and other reserving lands or any other related to the investments, as well as the investments. Thank you very much. I appreciate, and I appreciate Electoral College for giving us this platform to be to learn more and more. Thank you very much, and I wish to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your commendation, and I'm sure the executive director will take your openness, the openness of your association to work with federal government on policies to reduce clashes to the relevant authorities. You asked the question of crisis communication, and I took our screen back to forms of governance communication, because essentially you were asking about crisis and the lack of information or timely information that leads to distrust. Yeah, that's what I got from that there's a lot of distrust because there was misinformation. And so the misinformation was not corrected, and it has led to a lack of trust. Yes, if you look at the forms of governance communication, I mentioned that the informative form is the one that is most common in Nigeria. We don't try to persuade in our communication. We are not very consultative in our communication. And of course, we are not participatory. in our communication. So it's mostly informative. But then I also talked about crisis management, crisis communication in crisis management, that it has to be very timely. As it is happening, as it is hot, make sure that you are countering misinformation. Unfortunately, it's the era of social media, and I think it's part of the challenges that I highlighted earlier on. Because of social media, anybody can just spread any information, and before you know it, sometimes our cognitive bias just leads us towards the kind of information that we want to hear. And it's not everybody that tries to, even when there is a rebuttal, you'll find that people who carry fake news hardly go back to say, I'm sorry, what I shared earlier was false. I have pulled that. Just a few people with integrity will do that. And so it's a challenge, a very present challenge that all of us must join hands together to combat, not just government. And when we hear that the government needs to regulate social media, especially, let us not all be, let's not raise arms in war, thinking that there is a clampdown on free speech. We need to regulate the way that, I'm not calling for it, I'm just saying that it could be a recommendation that we need to regulate how information is shared. Information, especially during crisis, that has potential to escalate crisis, that has potential to foment trouble, that has potential to break down law and order and the peace, should actually there should be consequences for such spread of information, for the originating of it and for the spread of it. What should government or the stakeholders, leadership of stakeholders had done during the Karo incident, unfortunate incident, is they should have been timely information and they should have used a lot of people, if need be, influencers, to ensure that their messages went far and wide. And you continue to repeat these messages until it dispels the false narrative. That's the best thing that could happen. It will take a while, but eventually, when a communication that is factual, even if it's a lie, when lie is repeated often, you've heard it, it becomes somehow the truth. But then if it is now factual, is repeated often and often and often enough, then it sits somewhere very prominent in the consciousness of the people. And so it dispels misinformation and distrust. Thank you. I hope I've been able to answer your question. Moderator? I can't hear anyone.
There.
Hello.
Okay, let's take another hand. Ferami, I've asked you to unmute. Please go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Mark, for that insightful conversation. I just wanted you to shed light on the role of storytelling in public communication.
Okay, so storytelling is a tool in communication. Is it a tool now, or is it a form of it reinforces it helps people relate to a story. It helps people relate to an event that you are trying to communicate. It could be a policy, it could be an action or activities. Storytelling, for instance, I could say that on August 21st, 2009, I had a preterm baby at 25 weeks. And the hospital in the heart of Abuja, where I had this baby, did not have incubator, a functional incubator, did not have oxygen, and did not have the necessary tools and personnel to ensure that this baby was well cared for. And that transportation had to be by public vehicle. And by the time we got to a big government hospital that could take the baby, there had been some complications that the baby had to spend about 80 days in the hospital trying to recover from. That's one. What am I trying to say? I use that story to bring people in, and then I now delve into the fact that federal government, through the Ministry of Information, must enact a policy. For instance, I'm advocating that there should be no hospital that takes deliveries, no hospital that takes antenatal services should continue unless they are certified to be prepared for emergency deliveries. For instance, that's for advocacy. However, if I was in government and now government has now, my state government or my principal, for instance, has bought incubators, how many preterm children are born? Not you have more babies carried to term than preterm children, right? And so again, we criticize from the point of privilege. And you go, why are they buying incubators? Why are they wasting money buying 100 incubators when they could have bought 35 ambulances? We have more accidents. And then I use that same story, and I say that we have encountered situations where children die simply because hospitals do not have incubators to manage preterm deliveries. And that although the number is low, is few, is not that high, every child counts. That so long as the heart is beating, it must be helped to survive. And so you talk about 1, 2, 3 stories of babies that did not make it because there was no access to incubators and professional care. And you talk about 1 or 2 other stories that with different outcomes, real stories, sometimes could be fictional, but then you use it to drive home a point in a way that people are able to resonate with, and it makes them unable to question loudly, even if they wanted to. So storytelling is very potent, is a very powerful tool for communication, whether in governance or in any other sector.
Thank you.
All right, Aka Patrick, I'll ask you to unmute.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Yes, thank you very much. Please, my question has to do with communication, political communication as is being carried out most of the times by government officials, particularly at the federal level. You know, you discover that most of the times this information is being passed across, and then it seems to look like a top-down thing. You know, like for instance, now we all know that things are really, really tough in the country today. And then you see government officials, spokespersons, special advisors, chief press secretaries, you know, various appellations coming out to say things, you know, to reel out figures, statistics. Oh, you see the GDP is this, the GDP is that, the economy is improving. And then some of these things have nothing to do with the realities the people are facing, you know. So I think that what the people rather should be done is that it should be the people rather that should be appraising the government and saying, government, you're doing well, and not the other way around, government trying to tell the people what they are doing and what impact what the government is doing is having the lives of the people. So what am I trying to say? Because most of the times we discover that once maybe an advisor to the president or someone on media is talking, what you just see is that you just see resentment, you see negative comments coming from Nigerians. Nigerians are, you know, saying things you could clearly see that they don't believe these people, they don't perceive this, these people are people who already have image problems. These are people who the people see them as people that should not be taken seriously, you know, and things like that. So I feel that beyond Nigerians lamenting, that what else can Nigerians do in situations like this, where spokespersons for let me be precise, the president comes out and is telling them things that are completely not in tune with the reality they are facing. What else can Nigerians do in that kind of situation? That is one. And then secondly, the spokespersons themselves, is it that they are not aware of some of these things or what? Because they just come on air. Okay, let me just make a reference to an incident that happened some days ago. The special advisor to the president on, I think, policy and communication also, that's Mr. Daniel Bwala. He came out and was saying things, and you could see that Nigerians clearly were disagreeing with him openly, that these things you're saying, no, it's not true. That how can you be telling us that insecurity has improved? How can you tell us that the economy is improving when what we are seeing is a completely different thing? So is it that these people don't really know that they have to ensure that what they are saying is in line with the realities the people are facing on ground? Thank you.
Thank you very much. At the beginning, we talked about intention versus perception and why strategic communication is very, very critical in governance. And I also mentioned down the road that what we have in Nigeria is not communication within governance, but is rather information passing. And what information passing does is that it just dumps information, just dumps the message on the people. This is what has happened. This is what this is what is going on. No data, no facts that can be verified, no fillers. And so it widens the distrust. And don't forget, one of the functions of communication, not information now, of communication in governance is supposed to build trust and improve transparency and increase accountability. So to your question, what should Nigerians do then? The onus is not on Nigerians to do anything. The onus, even though governance is supposed to be participatory, there is a driver of the process. It's the driver of the process that has the conductors. The conductor is the one who calls people onto the bus. So government is the driver. The ministers, the spokespeople are the conductors who are supposed to drive the process of inclusive governance that now brings all the stakeholders on board. So what should be done still rests on government. Government should ensure that messaging is framed in such a way that the intention is aligned with the perception. Why is there still distrust? Because, like I said in my presentation, many times government is unable to communicate effectively what they are doing. Now, if government says that insecurity has reduced, if they give you facts and say 2 years ago, along Kaduna Abuja expressway, every month there was an average of 30 kidnappings, but now 2 years later, every month it has not, we have not been able to eliminate it, because believe it or not, you cannot totally eliminate crime. There's no, it's not going to happen. So but now every month we now have an average of one, regardless of the fact that the one is very important. The one should not happen at all, regardless of the fact that the one could be our own person. If we are objective enough, then we'll know that 30 to 1 is significant progress. But when they just give out this information and throw it in the air without anything to back it up, it becomes a problem. That is why there is distrust. If you say that because fuel subsidy had been removed, we have been able to increase the revenue of states from X amount, or by so percentage, by 200%, by 100%, they now earn more, they get more from federal allocation. And so we expect that they're able to do more for their states, because after all, we all live in states. Or there's been a personal disappointment that I have with this government. I think that one of the policies that they have enacted, one of the policies that has been announced, which has not been implemented, even though the case went all the way to the Supreme Court, is the local government fiscal autonomy. Why are state governors not buying into it? Why are they so fiercely rejecting it? And why are the people seemingly on the side of the state governors? We all live in local government areas, first and foremost. We live in local government areas that are within states, and the state is in a federal entity, in a federal, environment. So what is happening? Why are governors not allowing? Why do they not want their states to have fiscal autonomy? I expected that this conversation should have continued, like persistently. This thing needs to happen. If development is going to happen, development should not, just like information is not supposed to be top to bottom, like you said, but if they are the ones doing things, then they should inform us. They should communicate to us. This is what we are doing. This is the impact. Now, if there is a disconnect between activity and impact, tell us where is the gap. And then align with stakeholders to educate people to say there is this gap here. This is the activity. This is supposed to be the impact, but we cannot move from activity to impact because in this place is a chasm. And this chasm is caused by XYZ factors. We need you, stakeholders, the media, the civil society, strong civil society. Let's come to a round table. How do we tackle this situation? Get the state governors involved. What is the issue? What exactly is going on? Why should we be spending on your behalf? If the federal government is not spending on your behalf, why are you spending on behalf of these local governments? You see that state governors are the ones who are buying vehicles for use in local government. They are the ones who are giving out contracts for infrastructural development in local government areas, which is an aberration and a total abuse of the spirit for which the local government was established in the first place. So I expect the federal government to actually rally through strategic communication, rally Nigerians to say, you know what, we are doing this, we have done this. This is the other part that is supposed to do this. Governance does not happen just linearly. We do our part, these people do their part, these other people do their part in order for X to happen. So if any part of the system does not work well, then you cannot have results. So I expect that these things should happen, but they have not happened. Why they have not happened is not something that I am privy to. But I do hope that would be able to have other forms of communication or strategic communication on the whole. There are times that you have both the informative, both the persuasive, both the participatory and the consultative happening all together on certain issues. And there are times that informative alone is enough. There are times that participatory alone is enough. But at some point, we must move from just dumping information, and then when people are reacting, they are reacting negatively because the perception is bad. The perception is that, oh, they are coming to lie to us again. Meanwhile, it could be the truth, but then the perception persists. So they need to work on that perception, do a perception re-engineering by taking certain critical steps. First, there are some of the recommendations there to ensure that they are actually communicating around development. If you say that you are building roads, why are you building roads? What does it serve? Say that 20,000 people pass through the road and it is critical. And if we are able to build these roads, then these are the things that citizens stand to benefit, not just on the short term, not just directly, but on the long term and indirectly. So build trust and ensure that there's the perception re-engineering through active steps that are made to bring people into a communicative governance process. I hope I've been able to answer your question. You're welcome.
Inamdi, kindly unmute.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, ma'am, for the amazing lecture. My question is just a very straightforward one. We are talking about communication in governance, and communication has to do with passing information correctly. So my question is this: is it possible that we have a law, or I do not know if that is in the constitution, that where it is provided that agencies who are meant to pass information and fail to do so are held accountable and even prosecuted? I'm saying this because we live in a country where a lot of things happen, and the people are not even properly oriented or informed. The decisions that the government make or take sometimes are most times the people are not duly informed and all of that. We just see things on the news and all of that. For example, I just discovered not long ago that we've had genetically modified seeds, especially beans, approved, and it has been in the Nigerian market as far back as 2019. So people who eat beans would agree that these days beans it doesn't take time, unlike it usually. Yeah, so it gets done and all of that very fast, very quickly now. So there has been a lot of changes in a lot of things that we consume. Ginger, for instance, as well. For a lot of things that we consume now have been compromised, and people are not even aware. So if we are to embrace, for example, GMOs, these things should be labeled. People should have a chance to make a choice, right, as to what they consume, as to what goes into their body. But people don't even know about all of these things, and it is the duty of the National Orientation Agency or whichever ministry or parastatal that has that responsibility to create this awareness, make this known, label these things. What are you NAFDAC doing about it? So these agencies who have these responsibilities to pass information as at when they need to do and do the necessary things. If they fail to do so, are there penalties that can be followed? Can they be prosecuted? That is just what I want to ask. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you. That's a very germane question. A few days ago, I think Monday or Sunday, I cooked beans, and this thing that you are talking about, I experienced it. 20 minutes beans done, and I was like, what's going on here? In fact, overdone. What happened? I knew that it was genetically modified beans, and like you rightly have pointed out, why do I not have the choice to want to waste my gas? When I was having the conversation with somebody, the person said, well, but it's good for you. You don't need to waste your gas. Why do I not have the choice to want to waste my gas to cook my beans for longer? Why does someone else have to make that choice on my behalf? Why don't I know that what I'm buying is a GMO, right? So I don't know what the Constitution says about penalties for information hoarding or ineffective dissemination of information. However, I think that what can happen is to rally the legislature. Who is your representative in the House of Representatives? Who is your senator in the Nigerian Senate? They are the lawmakers, they are the ones who make the law. What Nobody is saying that we do not want GMOs. We are saying that yes, it's a capitalist economy. Let GMOs come, let them be there. But NAFDAC, like you said, NAFDAC, what's going on? You are supposed to certify that the food is good. Yes, it is okay for consumption. However, what happens with the labeling? So it's a multi-stakeholder involvement that we need to get at. We need the FCCPC, competition and Federal Competition and Consumers Protection Commission. We need NAFDAC. We need National Orientation Agency. We need Ministry of Information. We need the Ministry of Agriculture. And of course, we need the legislature that are supposed to serve as oversight over all these other agencies of government that are in the executive arm. So what is going on? Why are GMOs surreptitiously introduced into the market? And why do we go to the market and we do not know that okay, this one is local beans, like we have with rice. People go to the market and decide it is Nigerian rice I want to buy. So there should be such labeling, let people decide what they want. And I think that's something that this is a challenge that the Electoral College, as a civil society organization, can rally other civil society organizations to do and advocate on. So thank you very much. I don't have the answer to the question of whether it is what the Constitution provides for people who fail in disseminating information or disseminating it effectively. I don't have an answer to that, but this is a challenge that is worth taking up.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat box from Ernest.
Okay.
Reads, why do governments give out contradicting information, especially when it comes to figures? In a crisis situation and financial statements on either money spent or number of casualties, sometimes with accuracy, such information does not represent the reality on ground. Is this
ethical?
Is it ethical demand or empathy? And further said, lost this question. What advice would you offer to the core member who criticized the president's economic policies and sooner minimum wage if NYSC was implemented? Was it a coincidence or the government reaction to
criticism?
Yes.
Okay, so there are two questions here from Ernest. Thank you for your questions. Why do government give out contradicting information? This happens even in our families and our organizations because of a lack of a centralized warehouse, information warehouse. There is a ministry that is saddled with the responsibility of communicating or informing Nigerians. And that ministry has agencies under it. It has the Voice of Nigeria. It has, what's this orientation agency called? It has other agencies that are supposed to be the ones that give out information. But what do we have? We have proliferation of information. So there is no warehouse of information. A ministry does something and it says this, it has its own information, maybe because we want to create jobs. It has its own information officer that goes out there and says one thing that does not align with another. It just speaks to the lack of organization in governance. And it's a symptom of a deeper problem that as a people we do not give prominence to ensuring that we are alignment of information. Not saying that people should come together and lie about figures, but if you have empowered, for instance, if the Ministry of Women Affairs has empowered 50,000 women, for instance, and government now says that, oh, we have empowered 300,000 women, and people say it's a lie. Maybe it's a lie, maybe it is not. It could be a lie, it could be the truth, because Ministry of Women Affairs is just one of the ministries that could have done this, but there could be other agencies, maybe through Empower, maybe through JEEP, maybe through other what's it called now, projects. Government is able to do other things, and so they aggregate the number. But again, it's a lack of coordination that we cannot warehouse our information in a ministry, the ministry that has been specifically set up to do that. Now, whose fault is it? Is it the fault of the ministry, or is it the fault of government that there is no coordination? This government came and there is supposed to be a special advisor on governance coordination, and that's Hadizabola Usman. I don't know, I can't say, I have not tried to assess the impact of a job. You have just brought this up. I don't know if this persists, if this situation also persists in this government. I have not paid attention to it, but I do hope that her office is able to coordinate activities of government, and that the Ministry of Information actually does warehouse information and is able to give coordinated and accurate information when things happen and when policies are implemented and measure the effectiveness thereof. On the second one of, I'm not getting what you mean by what advice I would offer to the core member. I don't know, but what I know is that it's unfortunate that we don't try to investigate things, right? Apologies to the Muslims in our midst here. In the Bible, it says that you should investigate all things, not some things, not most things, not a few things. Investigate all things and hold on to that which is the truth. I do know that when the whole hoopla of the core member criticizing the president's economic policies, and then all of a sudden people were like, oh, she did well, she did well. I was flummoxed because months before, the DG of NYSC had come out to say that the federal government had already approved, and it was in the news, it was everywhere. You just Google it, and the federal government had approved, but that the new budgets had to, be enforced for the approval to take process, because it's an entire process. You send a memo asking for an increase, and then you get approval from the presidency or from FEC, Federal Executive Council, and then after getting the approval, it doesn't automatically mean that money is going to be released, because money is budgeted for. So last year, your approval is this year. The budget in force is last year's budget. You have to wait until this year's budget is passed, and then that's going to happen. So I was very, very amused that people thought it was either a coincidence or government listened. It was neither. Or was it a coincidence? Maybe, if anything, it was a coincidence, but it was, maybe the girl was just very smart. She knew that it was going to happen, and then she made her criticism when she made it, and the people who didn't know any better gave her the credit for it.
Ambassador, I've asked you to unmute.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, ma'am, for a very insightful lecture. Quick one. I mean, you started answering it with the last question that was asked. But I would like you to delve deeper into it. And that's the point, that it would seem that the government is a major purveyor of fake news, misinformation, and disinformation. And I'll give you two quick examples to address that point. Recently, P2B was in those states to do some donations to a hospital, and the former governor of that state, who is also a serving senator, Shomole, came out in public to say that that hospital that P2B donated to receives subvention from the Edo state government, and that indeed it's so that's basically trying to discredit P2B. I mean, this is a former governor who should know better, who is a current senator who should know better. And in my state also, so the former governor in my state also converted a government property in the name that he was trying to upgrade that property for the benefit of all citizens, only for us to find out when he's left government and EFCC starts investigation that government property, a college, actually was turned to his private institution, and this information was given by him as the serving governor. And there are so many examples I can give for want of time. So why would it would seem indeed that government is a major purveyor of disinformation, fake news, and malinformation? What do you have to say to this?
Well, I always say that yes, if a fake news purveyor as a citizen becomes a governor, he will be a governor that spreads fake news and spreads falsehood. So we are who we are. Our character is formed. We don't become somebody we are not in government. The saying is that power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So power would corrupt you to the extent where you permit it, or to the extent where you yourself have been willing in your subconscious to be corrupted. And then when absolute power comes, you just feel on top of the world. The governor, now I don't want to delve into the specifics. I want to look at the general overview of what happens, how governments would, perhaps when he said that there was subvention, don't forget that these are politicians. So, of course, he trying to discredit P2B was simply because they do not belong to the same political parties. And believe you me, the politics of 2017 has begun right within the governance, ongoing governance of 2023 to 2027. So, in between governance, politics has started. However, it's possible that government gives subvention. We all know that sometimes in my community, in my own community, I know that there was a time that we even caught somebody who had stolen things from the hospital for sale. So government sends in equipment, government sends in drugs, and you have people who pilfer them and set up their own chemists. You find nurses who work in government hospitals, they sell drugs from under their bed. You go to their house and say you want to buy drug, they'll pull something, carton out of their bed, and those are government hospital drugs in most cases, not all cases. Then you had, when I was in primary school, I went to a public primary school. In fact, I went to public schools all my life. A public primary school. In those days, the libraries were fully equipped, well equipped. You had books, all manner of books. And then before you knew it, teachers then, private schools were not so many. Teachers they started bit by bit, just a small room somewhere in their house where they say that they are doing lessons. And then those who had access to the library started, of course, with connivance of maybe the headmasters. You went into the library one day and you saw that books had disappeared. They never came back. Teachers who were supposed to be custodians have pilfered these things. So it's possible. I'm not saying it's for sure it happened. It's possible that he could have given subvention, and it is possible that those subventions never got to the hospital, or he got to the hospital and they were diverted. One, it's also possible that he was trying to discredit Peter Obi. Two things that do not agree can be true at the same time. That there was subvention under his administration is possible. That P2B is donating to the institution is a fact. That he could be trying to discredit P2B is also a fact. So is government a strong major purveyor of misinformation? In some instances, I just said that sometimes it's as a lack of coordination, but sometimes it's also as a lack of integrity and character in some of us who get into government offices. People with integrity would do their work. There is governance. When you are talking about communication, you have to look at pathos. You have to look at logos. You have to look at ethos, and you have to look at pathos. Logos is the logic. Ethos is the credibility, the ethics, the values that you bring to your communication, and that is what shapes perception. And then pathos is the empathy that you bring into it. All these three have to be present to ensure that communication happens effectively. So most times you realize that some of the people in government do not even understand these basic things. They don't even understand. You will be shocked to realize that some public officials do not understand the need for effective communication. They just think, just go there. Call, why do you need any strategy? Why are you strategizing? Just push it there. And that's what they feel. Let's do it anyhow. Let's just do it anyhow. So yes, it could be a combination of different factors that would be maybe to take another one full day of lecture to try to get dissected.
Thank you. Thank you for those insights. And I can't see any other hand raised. Ma'am, please, can you help with a closing statement, and we can call it a day while we prepare for the next class tomorrow?
All right. First, I'd like to thank everyone for the participation. It's been a wonderful session. I facilitate workshops, I facilitate programs, but I think this has been one of my best. Like I said, I hoped when in the morning that it would be as interesting as the joy that I felt when I was putting my slides together would be the joy I feel when we finish. And I tell you that this has surpassed even my own expectation. I thank you all for your rapt attention and your active participation. And to Electoral College, the entire team at the Electoral College, led by my brother, Kunle Lawal, well done for the great job that you're doing. I thank you all for the insights that you have provided. I've taken note of some of them. I've been enriched by this sharing session that we have had. Thank you most sincerely. And I hope that you would have picked one or two things on why effective communication is critical, not just in governance, but even in the way that we do our personal branding, in our personal businesses, and in our private organizations, because effective communication is actually a critical leadership skill. And if anybody is preparing for leadership, they should be equipped with that skill. So thank you so much. And I look forward to being here with you guys next time. Thank you and have a very good evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. We can't thank you enough. Thank you from all of us at the Electoral College. And we pray God Almighty continue to ease your affairs and all the best. Thank you so
very
much.
much.
Everybody kindly unmute to say a big thank you for
Thank you
our
very much, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you very
Thank you
much,
so much,
man.
man.
Thank
Thank you
you
very
very
much.
much, man, for that insightful
Thank you very
connection.
much.